And in 1986, Sophie Ottaway was born with a very rare medical condition which required immediate surgery. Clerical extrophy, that's right, clerical extrophy happens when the organs in the abdomen do not form correctly in the womb, resulting in babies born with organs such as the bladder or intestines outside of the body. Sophie was, in fact, 100% a boy with a small, damaged penis but healthy testes. Doctors immediately advised Sophie's parents that their baby's male genitalia should be removed to avoid further complications. So the baby had to be registered by the following day, which meant that mum and dad had to decide whether to tick male or female on the form. Trusting the medical advice they were given, Sophie's parents agreed to the procedure, having been given the impression it was in her best interests. And they were told to keep all of this a secret from Sophie and simply to raise her as a girl. Following years of side effects from hormonal medication and health trauma as a result of the procedure, Sophie found out by accident that she was born a boy at the age of 22. And Sophie Ottaway joins me now. Sophie Ottaway, how are you?
Hi, I'm all right, thanks, Mark.
Great to have you in the studio. Can you tell me about the issues that you had when you were born? Because this is a rare but known medical condition, isn't it?
It is. Cloacal extrophy. It's 1 in 200 to 400,000 live births. It's bladder and bowel on the outside of the body, split penis. Basically a bit of a nightmare to resolve, but I was born wholly male, XY chromosome.
And the concern that doctors had at the time is that if this wasn't resolved with an operation, that you would have years of problems. Is that right? Pretty
much. They had to do something to resolve the urological problems, of which they still haven't fixed to this day. But yeah, that was the crux of it, that we needed to do what we needed to do to fix the urological problems, and apparently a gender reassignment is part of that.
But one of the most egregious aspects of the story is that your testes were removed. And, of course, that had big implications for your later life.
Absolutely. So the testes were removed. We don't have a histology report on the testes, so we don't know if they were healthy or not. The split penis was removed, and they did a vaginal reconstruction to a 2-day-old baby, of which it's a long story.
Yes, and this was a known medical procedure, but still relatively unusual and a challenge.
Yes, very much so. I mean, 1 in 400,000, it is quite rare, but there are 2 centres in the UK that specialise in this, so I wouldn't have been the first that would have crossed their path.
No. Did they do a good job or not?
No, absolutely not.
OK, and ought that to have been conveyed to your parents that this might not work?
I guess they conveyed to the parents that it was in the best interest of the child to be raised in that way, and they said it was best for the problem. For me, they did save my life. I'm here today, 37, living the dream. But, still with bladder incontinence, it was a urological problem. I still suffer from that urological problem, and they created me another problem in what they did with the gender side of things.
If you could have your time again, what would you like them to have done? Because they couldn't have just left you as you were, is that right? Or could they have?
Well, I mean, this is a really good question. I'm not a medical professional, and sadly the NHS seem to not want to talk to me in any shape or form about this issue, so I'm going to have to guess the best I possibly can. But I would imagine that there's a way you can put a bladder and a bowel inside of a body without creating a fake vagina that later gave me sepsis.
Right, and also to have preserved your testes if they were healthy as well.
Exactly, so that I would still have the option to be able to have children in the future, should I wish.
Your parents were in an impossible position.
They were.
They were listening to the experts.
They were as much a victim in this as I don't see us as victims. But if you look at a story, they've been in a worse situation than I am. I mean, imagine having to keep that secret from your child. I mean, it's got to be hard.
Right. So why this decision to do everything in secret and to raise you as a girl without telling you?
Well, the doctor's sort of words was that it's too psychologically damaging on the patient. My thoughts around it is that you can hide a lot in silence and you can hide a lot in the shadows. And when people start to talk, you can say, well, that's not normal.
Yeah. Do you think that the surgeon that operated on you had some idea that perhaps gender was an abstract thing and there would be no problem transitioning you? Was ideology part of it, or did that person just make a medical judgment?
So the surgeon himself, I believe he was just following the clinical pathways that were prescribed to him at the time as a young surgeon. However, the pathways, I believe, were informed by the nurture and nature theory prevailing nurture and John Money and his crazy ideologies. And I think that's why
so the idea that it's actually society that makes you a boy or a girl,
Yep.
and therefore what's the problem with transitioning you when you've barely lived?
Exactly that, Mark. Exactly.
Yeah, and that's an ideology that you challenge, which we'll talk about after the break.
Yes.
The idea that you can just simply change your sex is something that you don't agree with. How did you find out that you were originally born a boy, because you've lived many years as a girl?
Yeah, 22 years old, I was at the doctor's surgery. I obviously knew stuff was not quite right, you know. I knew that I had been born with bladder and bowel outside of the body.
But you were told that you had to have medication every day?
Yeah, so age 11, I presented at the endocrinologist, where they, obviously, I need to drill this in because people have been saying there were ovaries. There were no ovaries,
Yeah.
but I was lied, and I was told that there were ovaries, but they were damaged and had to be removed after birth. And because there was no estrogen from the ovaries, I would need to take hormones in order to replace that. So from age 11, I took those every day, and every 6 months I had a checkup.
But really, these hormones were not about your health. This was a way of perpetuating the lie that you were a biological female.
Absolutely, because without the estrogen, I'd have, I assume, presented androgynous for the rest of my life.
And those estrogen pills gave you all sorts of symptoms, made you unwell and overweight. You got off them, and then you felt better.
Absolutely, yep. I stopped taking them maybe 5 years ago, and I've never felt better. Yeah.
And so how exactly, precisely, did you find out?
22 years old, routine trip to the doctors, locum GP. I thought that I had tonsillitis or something like that. My mum, weirdly, always used to accompany me to the doctors. Obviously, I know why now. Looked at the screen. The locum obviously hadn't been given the word that we don't tell Sophie some of that stuff on the screen. Right in the middle of the screen was 2 lines, 46XY birth, split phallus, phallus removal, vaginal reconstruction, testes removal.
You spotted it on a screen. And if that hadn't happened, you might not know to this day.
Pretty much, yeah.
What are your emotions about this, looking back?
Well, initially it was anger. Obviously, I've resolved that now, because you can't make peace with your life and be angry. What's the point in that? Now I want to use what I've learned and what's happened to me in my experiences to inform better pathways for others. Like, let's turn something bad into something good.
But here you are, Sophie Ottaway, to tell the story. Why have you decided to go public? Because this is very personal.
Well, I think we're just reaching sort of the peak of the debate around sort of childhood gender affirming care and all that kind of thing. And it felt like David Reimer had a lot to offer years ago. David Reimer sadly isn't around anymore, but my experience is probably very similar to his.
Well, can you remind us of that story?
David Reimer, so 2 twins born in Winnipeg, they go for a routine circumcision. The doctor uses a heat wand to do the job. Sadly, the heat wand decimates one of the children's penises. Dr. John Money, a psychologist, comes along, offers to help the family, and he says, I've got this theory that nurture prevails over nature, and we can just raise this boy as a girl. They raise the boy as a girl. The girl later finds out, transitions back, and sadly commits suicide in 2004 in the 30s.
What's so difficult about your story is that all these decisions were made on your behalf, and to a certain extent they predestined how your life would be, and that was wrong, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it would have been nice to have had choice, and part of the argument that I've got at the moment is informed consent. Do anything you want as long as there's consent from an individual that is of age and of the right mind to be able to make that decision.
Now, I've met your dad. He's a gentleman, very charming man, and very handsome in the flesh. You must have been a bit cross with them at first.
I was at first, but you have to look at intent with anything. Do you know, people do questionable things all the time, but if they mean well, and they do. I mean, I've spent 37 years of my life with them, and they've never done anything that's made me hurt. You know, that's a long time. I mean, he's a lovely bloke, as is my mum. Well, she's not a bloke, by the way. That would be a bit weird.
That would be another story.
Yeah, I'll get her on next week.
Yeah, well, this is it. You've been offered further surgery but have declined, which I guess is not surprising.
Well, if you go for dinner at a restaurant and you get food poisoning, then you're not going to go back a second time, are you? That's the way I'm likening that to be.
You're definitely not. I mean, What is the prognosis for your health going forward?
Well, I've disengaged completely with the National Health Service, and the last I heard, I had a 25-centimetre mass that may or may not be the remnants of an old vaginal reconstruction that was put in my 2-day-old body. I decided I don't want to go down that route of progressing with those people, so I've used some alternative therapies to try and shrink this mass. And it's the hill I'll die on. I'm dead before I go anywhere near those services again. Absolutely.
So your trust in the NHS is
None.
gone?
Zilch. Zilch.
Do you think it's a cultural issue within the organisation?
I mean, I don't know. It's an organisation that's made of lots of wonderful people. I don't want to question those people at all. I'm just saying, due to the experiences I've been through and the aftercare, I can't visit again. TripAdvisor, nil stars.
You got this build-up of mass and it was infected.
Yep.
You could have died of sepsis.
I had sepsis. I presented with sepsis, and they didn't believe my story when I went in at first. It was only when they got my medical records from the GP that they said, "Oh, right, yeah, this is crazy."
And how are you feeling, on a day-to-day basis? How are you feeling?
I mean, I'm all right. You know, like I'm definitely not in full health, but I'm definitely in better health than I was 2 years ago. And every day's a new day, isn't it?
Yes. So, what is your view about children who are offered support to transition, whether it's puberty blockers or indeed operations?
My view is that obviously these people presenting, they have a problem. It is that their gender does maybe not match their birth sex. The first thing I would say is John Money actually invented the concept of gender in 1955. So we're putting people into manufactured boxes to begin with. Second off, I'd say if we really do have to think about medical pathways, the first thing we really need to do is just look at the mental health side, look at the inside. I mean, look at me. I'm choosing not to change back. And that's because, you know, however much I change my anatomy, it never changes my brain, it never changes my heart. And if there's things that are upsetting me or destroying me inside, they're still going to destroy me if they build me a fake penis. Yeah. And that's the way... But I fully respect anyone that does choose to...
So you think if a child has gender dysphoria, they should get some psychological support and counselling and just, you know, where's your head at, rather than just, here come the pills?
I never want to take anything away from a child. I just think that looking at the new private sector gender clinics that are opening up on the market, post-Tavistock, where we had 2-year mental health sort of investigations with the children before we got started, I'm very worried now that children are going to be able to get their hands on puberty blockers very quickly.
Briefly, because we could talk for hours, you identify as female?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do, because I was, you know, it was only because I changed, you know, at 22.
Have you considered identifying as...
No, I'm just a person. I mean, everyone's just a person. You're a person, I'm a person,
Correct.
We're all people.
You're Sophie.
I'm Sophie, yeah.
Yeah, and we like Sophie, let me tell you.
Thanks, I like you too,
Sophie's
Mark.
smashing it. My computer is broken with all the emails coming in
Wonderful.
to say what a remarkable and inspirational woman you are. Alison, I salute your brave attitude to come from the sake of other people who feel confused. And that's from Alison. You are a remarkable person of great strength, says another. You most certainly are. What about the future then? What's next for you?
I just want to keep on talking. I want to try and make sure that we review the medical pathways so that we've got informed consent. And I don't know where life's going to take me from there.
I'm deeply honoured that you came on to Mark Dolan tonight to tell your story. And there are many that want to engage with you. And so here's how you reach out to Sophie. They can write anything, can't they, really?
Send me anything. I'm Northern, I'll take abuse.
Support you, and they can possibly have similar stories. So here is the email if you'd like to get in touch with Sophie, and it's enquiries at sophiesstory.com. There's 2 S's in the middle, so enquiries at sophiesstory.com. We'll shove it on the screen. Oh, there it is. Well done, Cal. There you go, at the bottom of the screen. Sophie, a privilege to meet you. Come and see us again soon. The remarkable Sophie Ottaway.